Hey, we're going to talk to my friend Dave Runnels today. We're going to talk about why is self-esteem so important to success. Now, it may seem like a no-brainer to you that confident people achieve more success, but what happens when you've lost all of your confidence? Say you've had this huge setback, which Dave had. Oh my goodness. You got to stay to the end. Make sure you hear his story about his epic failure that was an eyesore in the whole community that reminded him every day of what had gone wrong in his life. But you know what? He was able to turn that around because he was deliberate and conscious about his self-esteem. He was strategic about his beliefs and the core stories he told us today, told himself over and over again. So join us today as we talk about why is self-esteem so important to success. Hey, thank you so much for joining us. I'm Scott Wilhite. I've got Dave Runnels here. We're talking about core beliefs and really how we can get those core beliefs to work out good for us. And one of the things that we really want to improve in our lives is really our confidence, is being able to understand who we are, be in charge of our identity rather than being the victim. Mm-hmm. You know, just you get what you get. And I met Dave a few weeks ago at a Toastmasters meeting, and I was so impressed with who he is, with what he's about, with who he was serving, that I was like, I gotta get you on. And so anyway, I just thought self-esteem is the perfect thing to talk to Dave about. So Dave, if you will just kind of explain kind of a little bit your story, who you are, where you came from, and
sure.
Then we'll talk a little bit about self-confidence and how that helps our viewers.
Well, thanks, Scott. Thank you for having me on your show. I'm excited. I love the work that you're about, and it's fantastic that you provide opportunities for people to learn about things like this. So, you know, self-esteem and how does it make you successful? That's a tough one. I mean, trying to unpack that it can be quite complicated, right? Mm-hmm. And I think all of us, at any given point in our lives, question ourselves. We question, can I do this? Am I good enough? You know, can I pull off whatever it is I'm trying to do? And it falls into different aspects of our lives, whether it's our careers, whether it's our marriages, whether it's some sort of extracurricular activities. And I think it's a constant struggle that we all find ourselves battling. So I don't know that anybody, including leaders of our country or leaders of the world, avoid having self-doubt at some points in their lives. I think the question is, when you have moments of self-doubt, how do you overcome that? How do you get to the point where you can turn that into something that allows you to propel yourself forward and be, you know, successful? And I think that's this whole idea is being success and having self-esteem, and what does that mean to you? And I think it does have a lot to do with what are the stories that you're telling yourself, mm-hmm. And how much do you believe the stories that you're telling yourself? I have been entrepreneurial my whole life, and I've had varying degrees of success in that.
Okay.
I started out in college and ended up not wanting to do the traditional 8-hour-a-day job, or 4 hours if you're supplementing it with school. And so I ended up working for myself. I'd worked for a physical therapist before I came to school here in Utah Valley, and ended up saying, okay, what can I do? What kind of skills do I have? And I ended up becoming an apprentice for a guy as a massage therapist. So I'd worked for a physical therapist and had enough skill, enough training at school with physiology and things like that I'd talked to this guy into letting me get a license with him while I was going through college. And so I ended up getting my license as a massage therapist and working over at New Skin, working on the weekends, 23 hours a weekend, so I'd have enough time during the week to do school. Oh. And it was a lot of fun. I learned a lot about it, and I got really good at massage therapy, and we did corporate stuff. So we worked in office buildings on employees. And after a couple of years, I found that it was a great way to sort of go into the education. What I found was I tried to hire people, and I couldn't find people that could do what I wanted them to do, and I was getting frustrated. And so I ended up saying, well, why don't I just start a school, and I'll train them in massage therapy. So I started the school and ended up trying to do it on my own, but it didn't work out. So I ended up selling the program that I built in massage therapy to a school called Provo College. I think Eagle Gate owns them now.
Okay.
And it ended up being a very interesting time in my life, because I had a lot of vision, but I didn't necessarily have a lot of know-how or a lot of self-confidence. Mm-hmm. And so being able to go through that, I ended up selling the program to the college. We got it up and running. It was their biggest program, and then I was out of it, moving on to other things. And I was grateful for the opportunity, and realized that it sort of helped me realize there's some things that I need to believe in myself to be able to accomplish. And found out that I didn't really have some skills, but I had others. So there's times where you kind of fall down and you go, okay, what do I need to do next to make myself a little bit better? So do you edit this at all?
No, we're just gonna
keep going raw.
Yeah, this is just us being real.
Yeah.
So when you started out as a massage therapist,
right?
Did you create your identity around I'm a massage therapist, or did you always have your identity as I'm an entrepreneur?
So my vision
who can do anything?
Thank you. Yeah, my vision was bigger than just rubbing backs, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a big franchise out now called Massage Envy, and that was my idea. Someone else stole my idea and ran with it, but what I wanted to do was to be able to duplicate what I was able to do with clients in the chair. I had a protocol that was fantastic, and I couldn't get people I couldn't just hire people with that skill, so I had to train them to do that. And so really the vision was I want to do this across the country, and I was going to use education to accomplish that.
Okay.
And so I ended up having a practice that had about 15 or 20 massage therapists working for me in business settings like we're sitting at now, working on clients several times a week. And so that was kind of the beginning of me trying to figure out what stories am I telling myself. And a lot of times we try things and we fail at them, right? Mm-hmm. And so for me, it was successful in one aspect, that I had built this program, and it was a failure in another aspect, that I wasn't the guy that was able to realize the vision that I had built. I ended up selling this program to a school who's still doing it. I started in 1998, and they're still running the program. And so I thought, man, I wish that was my program. So from there, I ended up moving into areas where I thought I went to MBA school and thought, wow, I can really pick up some skills in business, and then get better at business and work on other entrepreneurial ideas. And so while I was in college, I ended up working for doing real estate, commercial real estate. And what I thought I wanted to do was be a developer. I found a guy in my neighborhood who was a real estate broker. I asked him if I could, work with him a little bit, and told him what I wanted to do. And he says, "Oh, you don't want to be a real estate developer. They take too much risk. Be a broker like me." And he actually did quite well throughout his career. So I thought, well, I'll work for him and kind of learn the ropes of real estate, and then maybe I'll start doing my own thing. So I did that for a number of years, and ended up um, ended up starting a development project probably 3 or 4 years into that career.
Okay.
And it was a large development project, and I partnered up with a guy who was very sharp, very smart. And this was about 2002, and we built a development that was, at the time we were into it about $110 million. So it was in Orem.
It was just a little tiny.
It was in Orem, Utah, yeah. And we built this, and then all of a sudden, the bottom falls out of the market, and we're in the middle of this project.
Oh.
And it was a massive failure, and not that we could do anything about it. We couldn't.
Yeah,
control
that's
we
that's
couldn't
a
control
national
what the
economy.
market. Yeah, we couldn't control what the market was doing. There were hundreds of projects like ours scattered across the country. These carcasses were strewn, with nothing going on, and so literally, I mean, it was. You talk about self-esteem.
Yeah.
Getting your ego shut down pretty quick.
So how did you overcome that? I mean, because I get into storytelling all the time.
Right.
But I find it's really easy for me to get into the negative storytelling and tell myself I'm a failure, and then I have all this evidence that backs it up. So how do you get out of that and tell yourself evidence that doesn't exist yet? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, how do you turn it around? How do you turn something like that around? For me, it wasn't an overnight thing. And I think a lot of us in our society feel like when we're dealing with self-esteem issues, or we're dealing with something that really kind of caused some damage, right? Whether we failed at something, or a lot of times we live in such an instantaneous society, we think, oh, I can just get over that right away. I mean, I hate to say this, but I kind of crawled in the fetal position for probably like 6-7 years.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
And the thing was, this project was right by my house. I drove by it every day.
I know the one you're talking about. And it was an eyesore for
Yeah, it
years,
was.
because it was yellow. You couldn't miss it.
Yeah, it had this yellow exterior Den's glass
And it was
around
tall.
it. Yeah, exactly. You could not avoid it. And so every time I drove past this thing, for a good year or so, I'd feel a pit in my stomach. And there was literally nothing I could have done to make that any more successful. I was, to a very major degree, a victim of the economy and the environment that we were in. And sometimes, we shut down and we can't get over that. But for me, it was a matter of looking at myself in the totality. That was a couple of years in the total lifespan of my life, and so I had to kind of look back and say, okay, yeah, that was a big failure, that was a big miss. Mm-hmm. But what else has gone on in my life that's gone well? What other things have I been able to do that were successful? And sometimes you have to look back at past successes and go, you know what, I can build on that. I can recover from this. I can pick myself up. And
did you do anything? Did you have any habits that would remind you of some of those bigger picture stories? And what were those, and how did you implement them?
No, I mean, for me, there was a lot of self-examination that went on. There was a lot of meditation that went on throughout the day for many years. There was a lot of prayer. There was a lot of things that I did that reminded me of who I was. And I think a lot of times we think that a project or an event like that in our lives is the sum total of who we are and what we're about. And I had to learn to step back and say, wait a second, that wasn't everything I'm about. That's not everything in my life. I've got a beautiful wife. I have 5 children. They're actually pretty amazing. I've contributed to their lives. What kind of changes and impacts have I made in the lives of other people? And realize that I'm not a failure, and that there are other parts of my life that are good. So a lot of it was just reminding myself to step back and look at the 30,000 square foot. You can tell I'm a commercial guy.
Yeah,
30,000
foot
box view,
box.
and really just say, okay, what is life really all about? And when you're able to kind of start to achieve that perspective, then you can recalibrate a little bit and move forward. What's ironic about that, about 8 years after that thing sat vacant, a guy came along and bought the thing for like 10 cents on the dollar. It just it was like a dagger in my heart. But this group came and they picked it up, and I thought, you know what? They're starting with this. Maybe I have a chance to like redeem myself and at least finish the project. So I happen to know who the guys were, and I went to them and I said, guys, there's no one that knows every square inch of that building more than I do. Why don't I represent you on getting that leased up? And I just actually had gotten back into real estate. I'd been out for a couple of years while I was in that fetal position I was telling you about. And so they hired me. And
that is so cool. So rather than being afraid of where you were, you faced it. You
got back
right
on the horse, and it was scary. I mean, there was a lot of voices that said, well, you know, maybe this just isn't that good, you know. Maybe there's and so I ended up, if you look at it now, there's 4 restaurants there. It's a thriving property, both residentially and commercially, and so I attributed that to you know, not letting the past define me, because it really could have, and so that kind of helped me move forward.
That is so cool. So wherever you are and whatever struggles you may find yourself in right now, just listen to Dave's story. Recognize that one story that you're telling yourself about who you are and where you're at, it doesn't totally define you. Make sure that you tune in for more episodes, as we're going to explore this. We're going to figure out how we can really be more in control of our lives than we, you know, have previously been, where we can be the heroes and not the victims. So make sure you subscribe and catch us for another episode. What do you think? You've heard our thoughts? Now let's hear yours. In the comment section below, share what impressions came to your mind. What did you get out of this? If you have had thoughts to take action, please do so. Always listen to your inner voice. It's your ultimate guidance system. Of course, the best place to take action is at scottwilhite.com, because if you join me for a free web class, I will reward you by sending you my purpose planner so you can have a physical guide to help you get in touch with your inner guide. Your core story will serve you or shackle you. It's up to you. Choose your beliefs and pick your identity. It is choice, not chance, that determines your reality. See you next time.